A brilliant flash erupted in the firmament, heralding a catastrophic assault that sent several dragons plummeting from the sky, their bodies ensnared by a feeble magical aura that lingered post-attack. This fierce confrontation unfolded near the last bastion of humanity, nestled within the somber confines of the city. Explosions reverberated, and streaks of magical energy illuminated the air intermittently, as bloodied dragons crashed to earth, laying waste to the remnants of once mighty structures. Among the chaos, one of the most formidable strikes impacted the largest dragon, causing it to convulse and unleash a ferocious roar. Observing this turmoil, the elder, his brow furrowed in anticipation, remarked that even the mightiest of dragons could succumb to death. A figure known as Ato, the guardian of time who had emerged from a portal, approached with grave foreboding, warning that their world was beyond salvation. Turning to Ato, the elder knelt, proclaiming his readiness to sacrifice both body and soul alongside the time dragon, yearning to carve a path to the past for the elder. He implored him not to abandon hope and to provide the new generation an opportunity to thrive. With steely determination, he professed his unwavering belief that the elder possessed the power to alter the course of the future. Placing a hand upon his chest, the elder, eyes closed in contemplation, acknowledged his profound mastery over the fabric of time, a consequence of his vigilant watch over this realm. He recognized the inescapable truth: none could escape this world. Firmly striking the ground with the tip of his staff, a surge of magical energy burst forth, manifesting a glowing circle that spiraled upward around the elder. From this arcane energy, ethereal tones emerged, and with a frown of concentration, he elevated his staff while simultaneously gesturing with his other hand, amplifying the torrent of energy radiating from him. Before long, this energy coalesced into a radiant book. Cradling it in his palm, the elder declared that he who was unbound by time must rewrite humanity's destiny. With a decisive thrust of his staff, he directed it towards a radiant beam of magical energy, encircled by multiple magical rings. Accompanying this luminous stream, the enchanted tome ascended, and the quantity of magical circles proliferated. The beam of light fractured into spirals, ascending skyward. As the magic sword, a monstrous gaze ignited in the heavens, its owner sneering as it derided humanity's feeble attempts, claiming their struggle rendered them all the more pitiable. Stepping into view, the creature became clearer, extending its tentacles towards the beam of magical energy, intent on thwarting it. Acknowledging the threat, the elder grimly identified the being as the Forbidden God. While the Forbidden God ensnared the magical energy with its appendages, it proclaimed that the feeble hopes of humanity would be consumed by despair. As it spoke, the remaining survivors grasped the creature's intent to obliterate their chance at salvation. The monster continued its diatribe, lamenting that humanity had squandered centuries amid ruins, predicting that with such sorrowful aspirations, they would ultimately disintegrate into dust. The elder, eyes closed in meditation, concentrated deeply before raising his staff once more. Although he conceded that they might amount to mere dust, he insisted they would meet their end as heroes. Addressing the Forbidden God, he proclaimed it would witness their final act of defiance. Tiny motes of magical energy began to detach from his form, swirling into the ether. At his side, Ato pressed his hand against his chest, closing his eyes as energy emanated from him too. Knights nearby, puzzled, began to inquire about this phenomenon, realizing with dawning clarity that the Holy Elder was conducting a sacrificial ritual. The Elder then shouted that their era was drawing to a close and that they would soon face oblivion. Turning to his loyal warriors, he beckoned them to partake in this magnificent spectacle of judgment. The knights, closing their eyes, mimicked the Elder's actions, resolutely choosing to follow him into the abyss without regret. A tear traced down the cheek of one warrior, yet he too surrendered his energy, joining the collective sacrifice. Thanks to the combined efforts of the warriors, the elder, and Ato, the portal before them blazed with newfound brilliance and strength. Desperately, the Forbidden God cried out, attempting to thwart the unfolding miracle. The ancients, meanwhile, believed they were bestowing a gift upon future generations, envisioning their essence traversing the Milky Way on a lengthy voyage into the past to sow seeds of hope for humanity's future. The passage they forged, breaking through the forbidden, propelled the god into the vastness of space, soaring amidst the celestial bodies. The warriors speculated that this heralded the epoch of the ancient wasteland, a realm where fierce beasts and monstrous entities reigned supreme. They envisioned a populace subjugated by dragons, yet equipped with tamers, individuals destined to combat these formidable creatures and secure the finest resources. In their fervor, they conjured images of various individuals encircled by formidable monsters, acutely aware that beyond the confines of their shelter lay a treacherous expanse teeming with bloodthirsty beasts, poised to strike at any moment. The black-like main base had stood resolute amidst this perilous wasteland for centuries, its current master an extraordinarily powerful figure. It was he who devised a unique camp and specialized training regimen for aspiring tamers, a pivotal factor in the base's enduring existence. Later, within the hallowed halls of Blacklight Castle, Sohan approached the bulletin board, where a stark announcement loomed: there was no tolerance for idlers in the Blacklight training camp. Those whose eggs failed to hatch within 3 years would face immediate reallocation to the gathering team, with fatal consequences for any dissenters. The advisory further cautioned that training beasts posed considerable risks, urging individuals to enter the camp with utmost vigilance. Sai, cradling a large egg, settled onto a nearby barrel, resting his head on his knees, engulfed in confusion. Tomorrow marked the final day, yet no signs of hatching had emerged. He gazed at the egg with a mixture of hope and despair, cursing internally as frustration brewed. Suddenly, a brilliant flash illuminated the sky, capturing his attention. With widened eyes, he discerned a luminous object hurtling through the atmosphere, trailing a shimmering streak of magical energy. As the radiant entity neared him, its brilliance intensified, manifesting several glowing magic circles that danced around it. The energy collided with H's forehead, seeping into his consciousness. He recoiled in shock, losing grip on the barrel and dropping the egg, collapsing to the ground as darkness enveloped him. Visions of colossal dragons adorned with fearsome claws and jagged fangs flitted through his mind, a kaleidoscope of draconic forms, one of which was particularly immense. Abruptly, H was jolted from his reverie by the frantic cries of someone attempting to rouse him. He opened his eyes to a figure demanding his awakening, prodding his cheek with the whip's handle. The commands echoed insistently, and as he stirred, he was met with the scornful gaze of a boy, flanked by several others who were equally captivated by the unfolding drama. The boy chastised him for daring to sleep within the castle's walls. A mix of confusion and embarrassment washed over H as he struggled to comprehend the situation. The boy, now agitated, pointed his whip menacingly, demanding an answer and questioning whether H truly believed he had merely dreamed it all. In that moment, H's mind raced back to the dream wherein he had tamed a magnificent dragon, conjuring the image of the monstrous creature that had stood beside him. He pressed his palm to his forehead, pondering the existence of such beings. The boy's irritation escalated as he perceived H's silence, accusing him of conversing with himself. With a flick of his whip, he landed a sharp blow against H's cheek, eliciting a gasp of surprise. The boy smirked, taunting H about his impending expedition with the Wanderer's search party into the wasteland, questioning whether he would return alive from such a perilous venture. Just as the tension thickened, the egg in H's grasp began to emit a faint glow, a crack forming along its surface. One of the onlookers, noticing this miraculous occurrence, alerted the others, announcing that H's egg was hatching. Stunned into silence, H gazed at the egg in disbelief before erupting with joy, raising it triumphantly above his head and kneeling in exultation. The 3 arduous years of effort had finally borne forth fruit, and the promise of success shimmered brightly before him. At long last, he accomplished it. The boy, along with several of his companions, recoiled in shock, their faces a tapestry of horror as they beheld him. The boy, covering his mouth with trembling fingers, came to the startling realization that the protagonist he had dismissed as insignificant had indeed acted with remarkable correctness. With a gentle smile, he waved his hands, clarifying that this was merely a colossal misunderstanding. As H finally regained his footing, he resolved to inform the headmaster of his successful internship and his newfound mastery. Confident that the protagonist was destined to soar to great heights in the future, however, Lu approached, halting not far from them. She declared that no report was necessary, sending a shiver through the boy's spine as he turned to face her, recognizing the headmaster of the Black Tower. She resumed her stride, pausing before Hun to announce that he would now be able to connect with his egg. Repeating her words in astonishment, he pressed his cheek against the egg, closing his eyes and calling out to the one nestled within, admitting his eagerness for this moment. The egg emitted a slight irritation, and from within, a garbled cry resonated. Upon hearing this, Hun shivered with delight, exclaiming that it was responding to him. Closing her eyes, Lu also smiled, proclaiming the moment to be wondrous. Then, placing her hands on the protagonist's shoulders, she remarked on the increasing number of young tamers emerging in the black light. Suddenly, her expression darkened, her demeanor shifting as she noticed the wound on H's cheek. Inquiring about its origin, he gingerly touched the injury and, pointing toward the culprit, declared that it was he who had struck him. Angrily, he glared in that direction, demanding to know how the boy dared to assault a master. With crossed arms and a serious countenance, she threatened to administer 20 lashes as punishment and then banish him to the wilderness to fend for himself, ensuring he learned his lesson. Hearing this, Hun smiled with satisfaction, while the boy, drenched in sweat and terror, fell to his knees, pleading for mercy. He extended a hand toward the protagonist, begging for a reprieve. Ignoring his pleas, Lu turned away, instructing Hun to follow her. Soon, they arrived at the castle, entering one of the offices where Zhou sat. He leaned forward, elbows on the table, fingers interlaced, scrutinizing the protagonist before inquiring if he was indeed the first newcomer of the semester. As the master of the base, Lu, gazing decisively at Hun, confirmed this was true, noting she had heard he was about to join the search party before his egg began to hatch. The protagonist beamed with pride, and Lu added that he should be suitably rewarded for his accomplishment. Ecstatic at the prospect of a reward, H joyfully closed his eyes, calling the protagonist a stubborn boy, as he had managed to turn in everything at the last possible moment. He considered this quite commendable. With a grin, he presented Hun with two options. The first, to receive a shard of dragon scale, as his beast was a scaly lizard. He explained that this piece would contain high-grade dragon blood, hastening the hatching process. Taken aback, Hun listened intently as H elaborated that once hatched, the creature would be stronger than its peers, with a slim chance of being infused with a drop of dragon blood, enhancing its future strength. The second option he presented was that when the time came for Hun to acquire a second pet, he would allow him to choose an egg from his collection. Weighing his choices, the protagonist decided that a bird in the hand was worth two in the bush, resolutely opting for the first option. Overjoyed, he declared that arrangements would be made for the dragon scales to arrive by the end of the day. Standing, he expressed hope that Hun would remember this favor and contribute to the black light through his future endeavors. The protagonist thumped his chest lightly in agreement, his expression resolute. Beyond the castle, the realm of black light was divided into two distinct zones: the inner zone, where affluent members of the community resided, wrapped in a more virtuous atmosphere, and the outer zone, deemed grimy and undesirable, inhabited by the lower classes. The disparity between the houses of the outer zone and those of the inner zone was stark. In one of those outer houses, a piercing scream shattered the air. A man, clearly in distress, implored his companion to release him. Suchin, grasping his ear, frowned with displeasure, demanding to know what he understood about pain. Reminding him of his absence the previous night, she inquired about his whereabouts. With eyes clenched shut, he screamed once more, asserting that he was no longer in pain. Yet, as she twisted his ear more fiercely, she noted that she had ventured into the inner zone that morning in search of him. Yet, she found herself unable to enter, compelled instead to linger at the threshold, anxiety gnawing at her insides. With an exasperated tone, she demanded to know what the protagonist was even contemplating. The intensity of her frustration simmered, threatening to overflow. Just as she envisioned ripping away all his ears in a fit of rage, an unexpected knock echoed through the air, interrupting her thoughts. Still gripping her ear, she pivoted towards the sound, inquiring about the identity of the visitor. The protagonist glanced at the door, eyes wide with astonishment, as a young man stepped inside, his eyes shielded by his palm. He greeted her with a respectful bow, indicating that the castle's master had commanded him to deliver a tray laden with several parcels and coins. With a courteous gesture, he entrusted the protagonist to safeguard the items, wishing him triumph in his martial pursuits and the raising of his beasts. After the young man departed, both stared at the tray in disbelief. Suddenly, an infectious grin spread across Qing's face as she enthusiastically reiterated her question about the protagonist's success with raising beasts. Her excitement bubbled over, and she enveloped him in a warm embrace, eyes shut tight. In that moment, she reflected that their parents would be overjoyed to learn of his achievements. The decision to sell their old home, it seemed, had not been in vain. The protagonist was on the precipice of becoming a noteworthy individual in society. However, Hun redirected her thoughts, reminding her that he would still reside in the outer zones. Qing abruptly froze, her gaze drawn to the young man who had delivered the coins, still standing at the door, visibly stunned. A charged silence enveloped them, punctuated only by their exchanged glances. Finally, Qing broke the stillness, her mind racing back to her impending work. She reluctantly released her grip on him, who sighed in relief, eyes closing momentarily as she had clutched him rather tightly. As she exited, she urged him to behave and waved goodbye with a radiant smile. Han, along with the other young man, remained momentarily immobilized as the door clicked shut. After a brief pause, Han opened his eyes, a smile of excitement illuminating his face. Eventually, he placed the tray upon the table before him, brows furrowing in concentration as he unwrapped one of the parcels. The contents spilled into his palm, revealing what appeared to be dragon scales. Suddenly, the scales radiated an enchanting magical energy, causing Han to furrow his brow in bewilderment. As the mystical energy enveloped him, an image materialized in his mind, a resplendent book opening to a specific page. It showcased a diagram detailing the transformation of a scaly lizard into a dragon lizard using dragon bloodroots, scales, and the incubation of an egg. Han's mouth fell agape, astonished by this newfound knowledge. With a deep sigh, he expressed gratitude to the ethereal book before bowing his head, beads of sweat forming on his forehead as he grappled with the implications of the scaly lizard's potential metamorphosis. He recalled that an adult dragon lizard was a fearsome creature, capable of obliterating an entire city with ease, while his own scaly lizard was considered a mid-tier species, completely distinct from the dragon variety. Imagining the terrifying beast, he grimaced at the egg nestled in a nearby basket. Delving into his thoughts, he envisioned the root in question, picturing its brownish hue and pondering its suitability for him. In his musings, he recalled the girl beside him, whose exceptional talent had astonished the castle's master and earned her the title of apprentice. Gazing at the scale still resting in his palm, Han remembered that her first beast had been a high-class, perilous species. With determination coursing through him, he clenched his fist, envisioning the remarkable possibilities that could arise should he nurture a dragon lizard. Without delay, he dashed to the apothecary, acquiring everything necessary for his ambitious endeavor. Upon returning home, he ground the root, contemplating the power that awaited him should he succeed in creating a formidable beast worthy of the castle master's tutelage. He soon placed the egg into a vessel filled with the ground root, confidence radiating from him as he observed the process. Drawing a magic circle on the floor, he harnessed arcane forces to activate it, positioning the egg within as it absorbed the essence of the ground root. Suddenly, the magical energy emanating from the circle surged, illuminating the room with an almost blinding radiance, forming the silhouette of a dragon. The brilliance intensified, and Han instinctively shielded his eyes. Overwhelmed by the spectacle, the dragon's form expanded, growing ever larger until it ultimately fused with the egg, leaving Han breathless with anticipation for what was to come. As the enchantment began to wane, an air of bewilderment enveloped Han, who stood transfixed, his gaze riveted upon the egg before him. His astonishment was palpable. A moment later, with a start, he gasped as a fragment of the shell at the apex of the egg erupted away. His mind raced with curiosity. Was the being nestled within still a mere scaly lizard, or had it metamorphosed into a formidable dragon lizard? With a furrowed brow, he leaned in closer, peering into the confines of the egg. Meanwhile, on the training grounds, warriors were engaged in their drills, weapons clashing in a symphony of combat. Among them, Yu, arms crossed and lips tightly pressed, scrutinized the scene with a scowl. Abruptly, one of the trainees, his expression marred by concern, turned to his sparring partner, realizing with dismay that Han had yet to emerge from his shell. It had been 4 days since he had attended training, and his companion, assuming the worst, chuckled darkly, suggesting that perhaps the protagonist had met his untimely end. Yet, the boy interjected, deeming such thoughts inappropriate, advocating instead that they should await the head instructor Yu's intervention. Suddenly, Yu's countenance darkened further as she caught sight of Han finally making his way to the training plaza. She gasped in surprise, inquiring whether he even grasped the necessity of attending training. One boy, apprehensive, registered the possibility that Han had indeed perished, while Han, casting a glance at Yu laced with a hint of sorrow, confessed that he had to forego training, albeit for a legitimate reason. With a smile, she pressed for clarification, cautioning him that the reason better be substantial. Grinning, Han turned his attention to the backpack slung across his back, beckoning the creature nestled within to emerge. A timid lizard poked its head out, gingerly placing its paws on Han's shoulder before emitting a soft cry.